Story Chat with John Fornoff, the art and passion of storytelling. Here's your host, Brian Bullabush.
Well, here we are in South Georgia, where I've been for like about 3 weeks, something like that. And I'm very excited about this story chat. I'm excited about them all, I know. But this one is really, really exciting because we're going to talk about how writers and directors work together. So wrote the script I told you about, the Buick Special it's called. And I got to turn it over, my baby. I got to turn it over to the director. And I'm going to introduce you to the director, Levi Johnson. There he is.
Hello.
All right. So tell me what's it been like working on the movie and that kind of thing, and just what's been like working here with the
it has been one of the most incredible experiences of my life. I think it has been
same. Yeah.
I think it's been sincerely, I think it's been one of the most difficult things I've done, just because of the amount of volume and the stuff going on. But it's also been one of the most rewarding. Again, the story that you wrote blew my doors up. I don't know what's been said or not said, but
you can take from the beginning if you want.
Well, basically, we're running a film camp here in Brooks County in South Georgia, and we did it last year. We want to do it again this year, and we wanted to make it bigger and badder and cooler and greater. And part of that was we wanted to have a good story, a good script for the film. And so we shopped around and looked at different things, and nothing was clicking. And then my boss, Ms. Honey Korngold, was like, I have a guy, his name is John Fornoff. He'd be great. Let's pitch it to him and see what he come up with. And so we literally like barfed up all these ideas onto you. And I mean, it's just stuff like, hey, we want to showcase a small town. We like the idea of having kids involved. We have a parade that's going to be coming up. We want to maybe have a thing at a retirement home. We all this kind of stuff that just kept coming up. But for me, the one thing that kept cycling around was with that sense of wonder. We just really wanted these kids. There's a certain thing, as a kid sitting down and watching Indiana Jones, right? Watching a Steven Spielberg movie, Star Wars,
Notice the hat.
Notice the hat. Yeah. Okay. There's something about seeing these films that as a kid really, I think, is what helped me fall in love with film. And so to be able to share that sense of wonder and to build that understanding with our kids that were coming here. That was super important for us.
Yeah.
And so we talked over the phone, and I think it was all a 5-minute conversation. I know you and Honey talked more, but you and me, we had a total of 5 minutes conversation. And then a few weeks went by, and camp was getting closer and closer and closer. And I was like, okay, we don't know where we're just going to go. What's going to happen? Finally, the script came in, and I sat down to read. I remember finally getting my hands on it that night. And I'm always leery whenever I'm dealing with new writers. I'm always you don't know what you're going to get. And I sat down, I always sit down my red pen to mark up the script. And I was going to sit down my red pen. I was expecting to, okay, we're going to do this and this here. I was totally expecting to do that. And I didn't make a single mark on the page. The whole script all the way through. I think at the end, when Honey and I finally got notes back to you, we had maybe a total like 2-3 small changes. And they had to do with the fact that we were just limited in our space, in our time, and just certain things we had access to. And that was it, because the story blew our socks off. And it was one of those things where it kind of went for both. It was two-sided. I was like, well, crap, now we got to make this amazing movie. It's going to be a lot of work, but oh my gosh, we get to make this amazing movie. Because it was. And it shined. It's shining through, even though we're still shooting it now. In fact, we're shooting more today, actually.
Yes,
right
and
after
about
this.
15 minutes we're going to leave. Yeah. Okay.
But it's even in these moments of just being on set, sitting behind my monitor or behind the DP who's running camera, and seeing these moments that you inked on the page come alive is just so rewarding and so fulfilling. And I mean, I know that is for me. It's totally interesting because I'm a writer as well, so I know what it's like to write and direct my own work, and so but to be trusted someone else's baby, to be trusted what you've given. And then our process in there and collaborating, that's been probably one of my most fun things about this whole process.
Same here. And it started with the word wonder. That's where it started. Because when Levi was on the phone, he mentioned, I like a sense of wonder. Like every time you see a Spielberg film, there's a sense of wonder. And it's like, oh, they got me thinking. And that inspired the idea where Jake, we told a little bit about the story before, where Jake he's pushing the buttons on the radio, and it's all playing 50 songs, and he's in this 1952 Buick Special, and he looks outside his window, and it's 1950s, and he freaks out. He rolls down the window, and it's like modern day. Rolls up the window. It's 1950s. Yeah. That was a sense of wonder. That was inspired by that word wonder, and that got me thinking. So that was thank you for that inspiration.
Well, you honestly, Hani, we were just talking about the story of the script. We're looking at all these different options, and nothing was hitting right. And we were parsing out what it was, and I was like, I remember what it was like in high school as a kid watching movies. I wanted things with explosions and cool, fun, fantastic stuff. Dialogue was boring, and you get older, you start to appreciate some of that stuff more. But it kind of came. I think Hani was the one that initially said, "Yeah, we should give them a sense of wonder." And I was like, "That's it." She's like, "What's it?" And like, wonder. That's it. Yes. And so that's kind of become the trademark theme for this, because that's really, movies have that quality where when you go to a theater or you go home and you turn on the TV and boot up Netflix or whatever streaming you're into these days. People talk about escapism and wanting that escape from stuff, and I understand that. I'm not huge on that because it makes it sound like you're completely disconnecting from this world. I believe that movies actually have the ability to help you understand the world we live in better.
Yes.
To help you. Sometimes it takes reframing your mentality, sometimes to a different side of reality, to more fully understand and grasp this world and what we're dealing with and what we have to go through.
I love how you put that. And to me, something else I get out of cinema, the big, and also going to a movie. It's so cool watching it in the living room, but there's something communal about watching it with other people. There's something about the whole process. It beckons you to a larger world.
Yeah,
literally. I mean, there's a big screen. Everything's. But it just beckons you to live beyond where you are, and I think that's part of our supernatural calling. Is life, and God calls us to a larger world. And we constantly are thinking about ourselves, but when you think of others, and you think it beckons you to that world.
There's a certain call to a greater story, and each of us, we all want to be part of something greater than just ourselves, our own lives. And oftentimes, when we get stuck in our little lives, that can be lethal. That can be debilitating.
Yes.
And movies have that way of being like, "Hey, come up, come join us in this," and inspiring that in us.
Inspires the hero in us. Really? Yeah.
And that's a deep. I was this morning. I like to chill and get some recalibration time in the morning, and I read in the morning sometimes things. And this morning I was actually reading Joseph Campbell, a little bit of A Hero of a Thousand Faces. And going through, and he was talking about that separation of the hero from the first world, and how that's a process, and it can take time to dig.
Yes,
it can be hard to disconnect. I mean, Refusal to Call is a whole level of deep storytelling, but once you're up in it, once you're surrounded by that, and again, there's a deep. I feel like just like food, just like water, we need story to survive.
Yes,
we need to consume it in order to thrive right now, whether that's a movie, whether that's a book, whether that's a podcast or a radio or audio drama, whether that's music, right? Whether that's just talking with your friends at the end of the day, or doing whatever, or video game, I don't know, whatever it is, we need story to survive. And if we don't have story, we become malnourished, not necessarily physically, but in our hearts and in our soul, in the soul in many ways. And so for me, I like creating a piece of content that is going to nourish the soul, nourish the heart, and leave people better off than where we found them.
Wow. Well put. I love that. Man, you just inspired me in a whole different direction. I was going to ask you, like, that's so good. There's something about it, how it really pulls us out of our ordinary world, and kind of what God does too. He pulls us out of our ordinary world into his extraordinary. And there's something that movies, that stories do that. I know of a couple examples where like a guy watched a movie and it changed his life. I mean, he actually he felt he became, like, it wasn't a Christian movie or whatever, but he got saved watching this. Like, after watching this movie, it was big. It's like, what? But it just really spoke to you. Okay. There was another one. I was just reading a story of this guy. He was watching a movie, and he was a very wealthy man, but he lost everything around 2008. He was down to nothing, and all he had was property. And he saw this movie, and there was a scene in the movie of these vineyards going like this, and he goes, "That's what I want to do." He watched the movie, and it turned his life around. I mean, he made these vineyards in the middle of nowhere, Temecula, in California.
Wow.
And he started this whole from watching a movie, a scene in a movie. You never know what your story will inspire.
Yeah. Well, and it's amazing. I'm trying to remember who was part of this. I think he was one of I think it was actually Ben Burt.
Yeah.
Who did the sound design for Star Wars.
I love Ben Burt. Yes.
Love Ben Burt.
Sound designer.
Brilliant guys.
Yeah.
I was watching a documentary of something Star Wars sometime, and he had this quote that really stuck with me. It was I'm trying to butcher the quote here. Let me see if I can get it right. Paraphrasing, at least it down. It was if you are of the right mind and the right age, and you are able to absorb a character or story at that time, it becomes a part of you. It becomes a part of your soul. And there's a certain power in that, right? Where think of your favorite characters in film, right? Obviously, I'm repping the hat. I love Indiana Jones, right? I love Harrison Ford.
Yeah,
I love those films because they're about a cult adventure, about discovery, and mystery, and so much in it. And there's a certain depth in there, right? And I would argue that while I'm currently not digging up the desert trying to look for the Ark of the Covenant currently. Talk about tomorrow, though. I might try that.
Not yet, but next week.
Next week, though, I would argue that the ability that I have gained to take, to be able to jump into film, to take a risk, right, to do all kinds of daring, exciting things, in part was inspired by some of that, right? Again, it's a fostering thing. Again, these are the movies that my parents raised me on.
The call to adventure.
There's that deep call in there, and ultimately, like I said, that in my heart, these are films like Indiana Jones, Star Wars, you name it, Hook. I mean, I can go on Braveheart, Gladiator. I can go on and on.
Yeah.
These are films that really deeply inspired me when I was young and shaped me and my life. And if I have the opportunity to give that back, right? To be able to create films that do the same for up and coming generations, for up and coming little Levi's or whoever's coming along, that just blow my socks off.
Wow, that's just passing on what you've been empowered with. There's a moment, and what we're talking about as you're writing, and you're working with a director, especially in film. There comes the handing off of the property. Okay, so I wrote this film and I felt really good about it, but there has to be a point where you turn it over to the director. The director is in French it's called the auteur, the author. Yes, we have the writer who writes it, but they really shape where it goes from there. So there's a trust process there, and I've had projects where I turn it over to director and they don't get the humor. And it's just like, oh boy, if you don't get the humor, it's really sad. Or they don't get how to block. And it's just like, it's a train wreck. So I'm handing this over to Levi. I've never met him before. Hani spoke very highly of him. And one of the key moments for me was when we were in your office there and we talked about creative ideas. Let's talk about just visually, what are we going to do? And we started collaborating and we started going, oh, what if we did? Oh, what if we, and there's a respect that we had. That was one of those magic moments. It's like, oh man, Levi, at the end of the day, I would say, this is what I said. It's like, I can't think of a better director to take this project. He fell in love with the story and he saw stuff in there I put in there. I didn't really even realize, oh, that's a moment. When he takes the brake off the wheelchair, that moment. It's in the script. He says, that's a moment. It's like, that's a metaphor. It's like, he's really into metaphors like me, but he sees metaphors I don't see. So he has some amazing visual ideas and work with Garrett. Right off, they've taken this to a whole other level. So there's a trust, but there's also when you have that respect for each other, and he was listening to my ideas, but as I'm sending them to him, there's something as a writer hands it off to the director where he might have a little different vision. As long as he's hearing me, he listens to the idea and he says, okay, I see what you're saying, but I think I want to go a different way. That's cool, as long as he hears me. But there's something about you turn it over and you respect your director to take it that way. And it's going in a whole, like a beautiful direction where it's going up. Even I saw it as pretty cool film, but it's like you're taking it to another level. You remember that moment where we're collaborating on creative ideas?
I remember very vividly. Well, again, for me, you can have the most beautiful film ever shot, but if your story is garbage, the film's gonna be garbage, right? The inverse is true. Your film can honestly look like poop. but if the story is there,
Yeah.
it'll be the best film of all time.
Hmm.
And so as a writer, as somebody who story is the passion and is the key, and having written before, and I mean, when you're writing scripts, when you're taking what's in here and putting it on the page, you have a very distinctive view, and you see the film in your head, and that's a distinct skill. That takes practice, and that takes honing to get that and get that right. And so I knew first off going into it that I was like, okay, I need to sit down and work with John and pull out exactly what he's seeing from scenes. And you made it pretty easy for me because of how you wrote it. You just the way you beat it out and everything. I could see every shot as it played out. And until we sat down, I think that honestly, I would describe something like, yeah, that's exactly it. And I was like, cool, awesome, great, we're on the same page. But then other times, because there's certain areas I'm like, okay, walk this through with me, because ultimately your vision is the vision. Right. And I mean, I like I said, I had a few ideas here and there of how we could pull things and parse things out and add things in, or maybe we'd have to tweak it just based on our location or what we had time and resources wise. But ultimately, I wanted to be able to honor what was first conceived, and because it's a birthing process.
Oh yeah.
Right? And there's growth and change that happens inside there, but ultimately, I've talked to people and asked them about, sitting in the director's chair. I've asked people and other directors who've been through it. And, I've asked even some younger ones, like, hey, what do you like about directing? And I've heard a lot of stuff like, oh, I like being the guy in charge. Oh, I like, telling people what to do. And I'm like, okay, I get that. And that can be fun. But ultimately, and I think I've come to the conclusion that being a director is very much like being a conduit. You're at the top, but that's not because you're supposed to bully people around or be a dictator, but it's a conduit for everybody else's energy and creativity and drive, and it has to be focused. So the director's there for it, but it's a collaborative effort. Right? Again, I've got a few ideas, but ultimately I get to places like we're working with Kate Randolph, right, the DP on the shoot, great friend of mine, beyond creative, and we get somewhere. I'm like, hey, so the way I was seeing it, we can line this shot up this way, and he'll get there. He's like, well, I was seeing us lining the shot up this way and doing this instead. And I'm like, that's better. Let's do that.
Oh, see, that's good.
And that's exactly what happens. And that's happened with you and me. And you've come back and like, hey, what if we did this? Hey, here's some feedback on this. And every time it's been light years past whatever I had. In no way is this a one-man show. And I've worked with people where that can be the case. And I feel like the final product struggles at the end.
Yeah.
But if you work together and you collaborate, ultimately the best will rise to the top, and to see that and to have that at the end, and again, I love looking around. One of my favorite things as a director is when it can be, we're getting ready and set up for the next shot, and the DP's over here getting the camera ready, my gaffer's over here getting lights, we got grips running cables and stands and all kinds of stuff. I'm here talking with you, doing whatever we gotta do, and I'm sitting there and I get 2 seconds to just kind of sit and look and take it all in, and I'm seeing everybody doing what they're supposed to do, and not necessarily even not because I told them to do it, but because they're all working towards that common goal, that common vision, and they all are getting, again, that simple core story that this is all about. And to me, that's just one of my favorite things is seeing people do what they've always been.
I love that. They're all storytellers. We're all and you're the one that's directing you're directing us all in telling this story. Favorite movie, favorite moment on set. What would be a favorite moment on set?
Gosh, there's been
or a few, whatever.
Trying to think through. I mean, there's been crazy fun moments. Like we filmed the scene the other day when we were, in fact, you weren't there for this one, but we were. It was the scene in the script when Jake he's kidnapping Mr. G. He's taking him away from the nursing home without permission, and Mr. G's in a wheelchair, and Jake's running down the side of the road. And you were actually, I knew how I wanted to feel, but I didn't quite know how to shoot it. And so we talked, and you had an idea about whipping it down the sidewalk with this media stuff there. And so I took a small crew out. We filmed that the other day, and again, it to the people driving by in their cars and just on the side of the road, it must look absolutely crazy. Here's this young kid pushing this old guy who's flailing this wheelchair, and here's Garrett running by with the gimbal. And I was looking at the crew, and they're all like, okay, This is going to be interesting. And then I look at Garrett at the end of the track. And when he gets there, he looks back. He just goes,
yeah.
And I come and I see the footage and I go,
yeah,
because it really looked. It was that Spielberg-esque kind of moment. But there's been so many others. Again, we were in the barn. There've been all these shots where we look at the camera and we see how this one shot's panning out, and we're just kind of stunned at the beauty of it. And I mean, we've put the camera in some really crazy places and some crazy rigs for this shoot. And again, some of those favorite moments are complete accidents. So we did this shot in a car where we were having a camera follow a truck with the camera follow beside the Buick, the Buick Special. And it was the first shot of the day. We were still trying to get it all wired and figure out on our timing. And it was a mistake, but the shot turned out wonderful.
Even though it looked, you went to the back seat in the front, like I know it was quote unquote, it looked good. It's like, ooh, that's some nice movement.
Yeah. And it was, and I was the one driving the car in that scene because I didn't want anybody else to be liable in that one. And it ended up, like I said, turning out a miracle, and that it turned out what it did.
So we shot the 52 Buick in front of a 1950s set where he had people dressed up in 1950s clothing and stuff like that, and just the street and all that. Yeah,
it just and again, we've been shooting in South Georgia. It's the middle of June. At the end of June now. Yeah. And it's been hot. We've had like yesterday was like 104 out. So it was 98, but the humidity made it feel like 104. Yeah. And anyway, so it's been definitely a physically taxing shoot. But again, there are those moments looking into the frame of the camera when I'm watching Steve McCurdy, who's playing Mr. G, act, or I'm watching Marcus McGee, who's playing Jake, act. And you and I look at each other and we're just like,
there's some amazing moments. The actors are just pushing it to another level. Yeah,
they're wonderful, wonderfully talented people. And I'm just kind of taken aback by these moments. And I know this how, again, I'm already thinking 12 steps ahead into the edit, how this is going to shape out and look and sound and feel. So I know what we're getting is beyond good. I'm so happy. So there's been tons of moments. I'm sure that I can think of 1,000 more. But the whole process, like I said, it's not been easy. It's definitely been a struggle, and we've been crammed on time in some ways. And I've been having sleepless nights and all kinds of stuff, sand planning, nonstop working for like the past 3 weeks. But it's also just been so incredibly rewarding. I know, like I said, come the end, once we finally have the film together, we're able to share it with the world. It's going to be spectacular.
Wow. Well, I know we got to get on set because there's a parade coming up, and we're going to be. It's a July 4th parade. They're doing it early, patriotic parade, and we're filming the parade as part of the movie. Just I had one more quick question for you here, two, and then we're done. One is what would you advise? It's been great dialoguing with you. This is a lot of fun. What would you advise as far as usually writers are not allowed on set because there can be problems. Okay. Yeah. What would you advise if you're a writer and you want to be on set? What would be a good set? How do those writers work with the director? What would you say? Should they talk about it first, or probably you said we work well together, which is
which is a miracle.
Yeah.
I was going to say probably the best way to be a writer on set is to also be the director.
Yeah, that's true. I've done that,
which is not uncommon, and it's ultimately, again, I'm a huge fan of writer directors because ultimately they have the vision from the get go, which is normally how I operate. I normally write, I direct. And so for me, this has been a huge experience taking that vision to somebody else, and I think it's always unique, right? Like I said, when I first got the script, I never met you in person. We'd had 5 minutes on the phone, but I did not know what to expect. And I know originally you were scheduled to actually pretty much leave us before we really got filming, and then you ended up staying. Thank God, because having you on set has been so fantastic and so awesome. And it really has been a huge gift. Again, we've had a great collaboration in this process. I think a huge part of it that has connected on this is that we both know what our lanes are, and we're able to help and adjust and advise. You know, you're not big-headed enough to go, oh, he's going a different direction, blah 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 blah, blah. And I'm not big-headed enough to go, I'm the only one that I'm in charge. It's my way or the highway. We're both able to maintain that level of flexibility and understanding of, and even when melting in 100-degree heat, even when we're, wanting to pass outside road, we're tired and exhausted, and you have an idea and you come to me with it, I'm going to make that effort to hear and listen. Because like I said, you had the original vision. You also have so many years of experience, and that's something I would be a fool not to pull from. And so it really, again, it's a two-way street, right? You won't necessarily always find, if you're the writer, you won't necessarily always find a director who's willing to work with you tight like that. And same goes if you're the director, you may not find a writer who's willing to be flexible and understand that. And so that's why most of the time the writer stays offset if they're not a part of the team in that way. That being said, though, if you're able to find that and share that, or even again, I find it simple as just having a conversation with somebody about that. Be like, hey, this is how I operate. We had that conversation.
Yes, we did.
We were both,
talk about it ahead of time. That's
we were both like, hey, I'm a collaborator, and you're like, I'm a collaborator, and so it's like, well, let's collaborate. Let's talk about this. And again, I think we both collaborated enough that we were able to just slot into that.
That worked out really well.
It wasn't really an effort. So kind of backtracking into what would that be? Just again having the conversation about what that would look like, how to pace it out, and how to best honor it. And you again, you've always, we're on a busy set, things are flying around. You've always done a great job. Like, hey, we have a minute. I have an idea. I want to run by you. And normally, if I'm not free right then, I always find a way to loop back around and come and talk about it. Because, like I said, every idea you've had has been tremendous, and every idea you've had has improved this film in some way. And that has just rocked my socks off.
Oh man, it's been such a joy. It's such a joy. And one more question, we'll be done. You got to go. And part of that, just that handing off to is like trusting and also respecting the position that you have as the director. Final question, real quick, so we got to go. Is this has been so much fun. It's just what a joy it's been, and we're also apprenticing students as we're doing this, which is
a multi-pronged. It's make a movie and teach kids, so it's been a process. And then we're South Georgia Film Studios is starting off of this, so it's all kinds of stuff. Final thing, what would you do? You're a writer as well, writer and director. What would you say to encourage writers out there that are working on whatever project, stories, whatever? What would you do? What would you say to encourage them? Nowadays it can be hard as a I would go beyond even just a writer, as a creative. If you have the creative soul or creative gifting, it can be a challenge to feel like you're being heard in that atmosphere. And I mean, part of it comes down to my script versus your script versus their script versus the thousands of others that are out there, or my idea versus this idea. A huge part of it comes down to networking, connections, and relationships. Who do you know? Who's a connect there? Again, I'm so favored to know some absolutely incredible people that are incredibly story minded, that love and respect my creativity and my story gifting. But ultimately, I think the key to whatever story it is you're telling or sharing, I had a checklist of rules back when I was in college, and they varied on different things and different projects. Simple stuff like quality over quantity, right? I'd rather have something that's shorter and better than longer and badder, worse.
I'll go with it.
But probably the most important rule was so what, right? That at the end of the day, at the end of whatever I was creating or whatever project I was a part of, because I was, if I would collaborate with other people in project in different roles, whatever I was creating, my number one rule was so what. What is the point of this? What am I not necessarily what am I getting out of this, but what am I giving others out of this?
What good is it doing in the world?
What good is it doing? And if the so what at the end of it was not something good, I normally wouldn't be a part of that project, or I wouldn't create it myself. Or if I was struggling in my story, I would try to answer that so what first, right? So like, okay, let's say I've got a story. I did one of my films I worked in college. I did a pirate film. And I originally wrote it just for fun because I like pirates. Who doesn't like pirates? But I remember when I got there towards the end, I was like, I don't have a good rap. I don't have something to connect into it. And I was like, I've not answered my so what. I'm just making this for pirates, and that's not just a good enough excuse in itself. And the story ended up turning into a father-son story, and to them kind of, they don't always see eye to eye, but they end up reconciling kind of in the end. So the so what in there was their story, and showing how, no father-son relationship is perfect, but how we can get better, and we can fight for better rapport. And so having that so what really is a guiding light in some ways. And I think for anybody looking for that, whatever your so what, be it for your story and direction, but also for ultimately what is the impact you want to have, because every story has power. I love I'm again movie fan. I love Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility.
Yes,
I think that holds up tremendously when it comes to story.
Yes,
Story is powerful. You are what you eat, and you same with other people, right? And so ultimately giving people stories that, again, if you're at the right age, the right disposition, they'll take something into your very soul, and that'll impact you. So let's make stories that impact people, that improve their lives and their well-being. And so what?
That's well put. My son wrote me a pen one time, and he says, "The pen is muddier than the sword. Watch where you point that thing," which goes back to that. That was well done.
Yeah.
It's been great having you.
Thank you.
On Story Chat, and great collaborating with you on this film. It's been. You're saying it's one of the joys of your life. I would say exactly the same thing. I've been saying that over and over again. It's such a joy working with you on set and watching this come to life.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to see it.
Yeah. So can I. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a process.
Blessings. Good to have you, man.
Thank you.
Well. All right. Have a good one.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Story Chat. If you want to hear more, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. If you have any questions for John or feedback on the show, please email us at storychatwithjohn@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.